3 months ago, I put out a video arguing for an extreme edition of the RX 9070 XT that would, one, offer 32 gigabytes of VRAM so that AMD could try to push it into competing with some of NVIDIA's enthusiast cards, and then number two, push the clock speeds in the TDP as hard as possible, maybe to 360 or even 450 watts, so that AMD could get something out there that could argue it was an enthusiast tier graphics card. Well, NVIDIA continued to blunder basically every launch with Blackwell. Now, AMD did advertise overclock editions of the 9070 XT at the 9070 XT reveal, so you could argue they kind of did what I wanted them to do, but if I'm being honest with myself, I wanted something much, much more than that. I didn't want something like 5% faster than a 9070 XT with just 16 gigabytes of RAM. I wanted something much more. And, well, about a couple months ago, I did hear about something absolutely incredible being tested at AMD that made me say to one of my sources, no f***ing way. In fact, it was so incredible that I didn't just censor my swearing, I decided to censor myself from talking about it until I heard more from additional sources, because I thought what I had heard was just way too incredible to put out without being much more sure than just, well, one source talking about it. But, since I heard about that thing, I have been dropping hints on tons of content that this channel has put out, including a podcast with Tim from Hardware Unboxed. And that caused, well, basically every single piece of content I've put out since then to have a barrage of comments asking things like, where's Navi 48 Ultimate, or where is the 9080 XT or 9070 XTX, whatever you want to call it. People have been asking me to spill the beans on what I had heard for a long time now, and, well, I'll say it. I have this week gotten enough information that I feel like it is now safe for me to tell you what I have heard. And what I want to start with, though, speaking of all of those different things people have been calling this card, is the name. Full disclosure, I have no idea what this will be called, and I can't even promise you that it will launch to gamers. That's why in the title of this video, I put 9080 XT ES. ES stands for Engineering Sample Leak, because I don't want to say for sure when or even if it will come out. And I just think 9080 XT is the best way to communicate what you're probably thinking of this thing as, because this is more than just a 9070 XT overclocked. It's actually quite a bit stronger than that. Although, if it is stronger than that, I imagine a lot of you would be thinking, well, how is this such a well-kept secret? And I've been thinking that to myself as well. That is one thing that also made me apprehensive to leaking information about this engineering sample, or should I say engineering samples that I've heard of. Why am I the only one who knows? But I think I figured it out, and it's that this thing is both much stronger than I think a lot of people are expecting out of AMD if it does come out as a flagship gaming card at the end of this year. But also, how they're doing it is a lot simpler than I've seen anybody, including guests that have come on my podcast, guess. They're not doing it with some 384-bit bus. They're not doing it, with some new chiplet architecture. The way they're going to get to something that can't only probably kill the 5080, but also possibly the 5080 Super, well, it might remind you just that little bit of what they did with the Radeon 7, and I want to disclose to you everything that I know about this graphics card now, but first, an ad from a sponsor. This piece of content is brought to you by NOLA Mattresses. This summer, I can't wait to visit my family up in Minnesota again, because I know that when I am staying there, I'll get to sleep on a NOLA Evolution 15 mattress. That thing is incredibly comfortable, and it's not just me. Dan, co-host of Broken Silicon, and actually his dog Wendy as well, also agree that this thing is a premium sleeping mattress, well worth the money. That's incredibly comfy. It has breathable zoned air foam, which is good because I'm a hot sleeper, but it is also very good at softly relieving tension around joints and redistributing body weight effectively. But then, in addition to this foam, it also has HD Max Tri-Zone coils for targeted relief isolating motion between partners. And it even has 3 different firmness options you can choose at checkout for a perfect fit for you. It can be a plush, luxury firm, or firm. And plus, it's designed and assembled in the United States, and it is built to last with very resilient foam and 13.75 gauge coils. And just to be safe, yeah, it has free shipping, a 120-night trial period, and a lifetime warranty. You aren't risking anything trying one of their comfy mattresses out. And so look, if you're in the market for a new mattress and you want to support Moore's Law is Dead, follow the links in the descriptions below to get the best pricing available on a NOLA mattress. And remember, just clicking the link in the description helps the channel a ton as well. But of course, showing support by purchasing one helps even more. So support Moore's Law is Dead with NOLA mattresses today. All right, so here we go. Let's talk about Navi 48X. That is, of course, the name that I'm informally referring to this configuration of behind the scenes, because it's basically Navi 48, but not quite, but it's definitely using some sort of X to get to the performance it's going to hit if it releases. And I'll also say this too, I'm not going to put any leak slides or summaries on screen, because I don't think I'm quite there yet. Again, this is an engineering sample leak. This isn't a, this is when this exact model with this exact name is going to leak sort of thing. So just pay attention and listen to my explanation of what I have heard. All right, so about a month or two ago, one of my best sources told me that they came across these RDNA 4 samples in a test lab that were definitely for a new product. And that is because they were running at game clocks, so not max boost, but clocks actually running games like Cyberpunk that hit clocks between 3.4 to 3.7 gigahertz. And these samples had a 256-bit GDDR7 memory controller with up to 32 gigabytes of RAM. Now, there's talk about possible 16 gigabyte models, and of course there could be 24 gigabyte models as well, but yeah, up to 32 gigabytes. And some samples were even pushed beyond 450 watts. And this is probably what you're all waiting for. The cards were benchmarking between 15 to 45% faster than a stock 9070 XT, specifically the average of some of the games I was told. Then again, I'm not going to tell you which ones or how many were in the average, but the average was about a 28% performance uplift in 4K over a 9070 XT, although it did vary quite a bit, which isn't a surprise. This isn't a new architecture. This is just really fast core clocks and more raw bandwidth. And so you could imagine some games might not benefit from the extra bandwidth that much, and that's where you might get something that's only like, I don't know, 20% faster. Oh, and one more thing. I was also told in this test lab, they were working on benchmarking these cards with some new version of FSR4. Yes, I think it's that AMD Redstone thing, and I do believe that if these cards launch, that they're both waiting to get to the final testing and configuration so that they're actually ready, but also they're probably waiting for AMD Redstone or the next edition of FSR4 to be ready, because these will be truly enthusiast graphics cards. I mean, I said 28% performance uplift. That's something that's going to beat not only the 5080, but possibly even match the 5080 Super, which means it could trade blows with a 4090 from what I'm hearing. So you would want the next edition of FSR ready, so that it feels like a truly high-end experience. You get the full package when you get this card. All right, so anyways, I heard all this amazing information that made me lose my mind around a couple of months ago. I didn't just hear from this one source, though. Eventually, I got another source, someone who works at an AIB, to tell me that AMD reps had told them that they were going to have stronger variants of RDNA 4 later this year. And so, yeah, there you go. I've got this information that sounds incredible. I've got information from an AIB saying they've gotten a little nudge from AMD reps that there may be something more coming, but I still didn't feel like that was enough. So what did I hear this week that made me say, oh, okay, let's at least tell them I've heard about these samples? Well, number one, this week I was told by a source that works at a company that's a partner of AMD, that AMD reps were telling them that they would have a refresh of all types of AMD products later this year. It was a little vague, so I didn't think it was enough, but it sounded to this person like that might include faster variants of RDNA 4 cards. But then, much more importantly, I heard from another source of mine that works with AMD professional GPU reps that they were told that AMD would probably have professional cards with at least 48 gigabytes of RAM in quarter 4 of this year or quarter 1 of 2026. And if you think about it, AMD's already announced 32 gigabyte professional cards. The only way you're getting to 48 is how, everybody? With GDDR7. That made me go, all right, it's time to tell everybody. And so there you go. I don't know if this engineering sample will become a final product you can buy at a Micro Center or something. That's why I'm calling this an engineering sample leak. But I do know that deep down in the labs, AMD has a 5080 super killer that they could launch if they really wanted to, and that to me is very exciting. Actually, on the note of the 5080 super 24 gigabyte, something that I've already leaked pretty much all the details for, check that out if you want to know what that is. That's also what made me feel more confident recently to do this leak. Like, NVIDIA's cutting production of the 50 series. Well, they can't even make enough cards. Why would they launch any new super cards if they're not going to make enough of them to really compete in market share? Well, maybe it's because NVIDIA knows AMD has a 5080 killer coming, and they need something with more than 16 gigabytes of RAM to compete with it. That also makes sense to me. All right, now finally, the only thing left I think to really talk about with these cards is, why do I say Navi 48X, and how are they getting to 3.7 gigahertz? Potentially. We'll see what they actually get to. Well, it's because if it does come out, I'm pretty dang confident this thing uses either TSMC N4X, that's the super high voltage overclocked variant of 4 nanometer, or maybe even N3X. And now I'm going to make an argument for both. I don't know. I don't know which node these products will use if they come out, but here's why maybe it would be N3X. A lot of you are going to say that's insane for AMD to use N3X this year for a product. No, it's not insane, and AMD is going to be using N2X next year for Zen 6, and AMD's confirmed that publicly. It's not just my leak. I've also leaked them that and I have documents backing it up, that they're going to use 1.4 nanometer right after they use N2X. At this point, they're going to N2X next year, probably 1.4X a year or two after that. I mean, it would be almost weird if there were no N3X products from AMD, and this could be that product. Furthermore, the math works out to get to 3.7 gigahertz easily, actually. Well, not easily, but very conceivably. If they were to use N3X, I did that math as well. And AMD's done this before. They had Vega 64. That was on the 14 nanometer or 12 nanometer node, whatever it was, from Global Foundries, and then they announced the Radeon 7. This was fundamentally basically just Vega 64, but it was die shrinked to a bleeding edge node before NVIDIA had any 7 nanometer products as a pipe cleaner, they called it, with an upgraded memory bus. This would just be a repeat of the Radeon 7, which makes it very easy for me to believe that N3X, which will be in production in the second half of this year, this could be being used to have a pipe cleaner for a new high-end graphics card and for new AI cards for AMD. All right, but why would it maybe be N4X? Well, I haven't said this yet, but I've heard that some of these samples, once overclocked, were getting above 500 watts, and that most of the yields couldn't hit 3.7 gigahertz. That means that, yeah, I mean, if it's using that much energy, if, they're probably going to have 2 variants of this, not just one, but probably a cut down one, then that makes me think it really might be 4 nanometer. Furthermore, there is a TSMC facility in Arizona that has already been making 4 nanometer for months, including N4X. And that could be maybe where this sample comes from. And due to all these tariff wars going on, it would make sense that AMD would want to be able to claim they could make their new high-end card in the United States, and that is another reason why I think it's probably N4X. So I'm mostly leaning towards N4X as it being the node, but I certainly could, and I have made the argument for why N3X wouldn't be the craziest thing I've ever heard if, and it is an if, this product comes out. All right, now before I leave you, I did want to leak also some RX 9060 XT supply details quickly, since that thing is launching next week. And so here's what you can expect from what I've heard from a handful of sources. Again, no leak slides on screen here. Just pay attention. I'll be very quick. So, number one, it sounds like the overwhelming supply of the 9060 XT is 16 gigabyte supply, but it's not like 95% of it. It kind of, to me, sounds like 20 to 40% of the supply will be 8 gigabyte models, unfortunately. And so, yeah, expect the 16 gigabyte ones to sell very well. Again, I hear a similar supply for the 9060 XT that the 9070 XT had, which was a mountain of supply. There were pictures of literally mountains of these cards, unlike with recent NVIDIA launches. But if only, 60 to 80% of that is 16 gigabyte models, I think that's the ones that most people will want. They will sell it quickly. And by the way, I only recommend the 16 gigabyte model. I do not recommend touching the 8 gigabyte model. Maybe if it hit 250 or something and you only gamed on, played games that were like a few years old, I could see that argument because it is like RX 6800 performance. If it was 250, that'd be a really good deal. But otherwise, just don't bother. All right. So that's what I've heard about raw supply, 8 versus 16 gigabytes. Now, in terms of where you'll be able to get it, it kind of sounds like the biggest retailers, at least in the United States, is who's getting most of the supply. The mom and pop stores are getting screwed over this time around. I would look at Micro Center first, then I would look at Newegg, then Amazon, and then Best Buy in that order. Also make sure you check B&H. That's where I got my 9070 XT, but that's the order. Micro Center, Newegg, Amazon, Best Buy. That's the order of who will be getting the most supply, it sounds. And smaller retailers probably won't get them. It's mostly big online retailers or Micro Center. When it comes to actual MSRP pricing, there are MSRP models, it seems like, from probably every AIB here. So there is, it kind of to me sounds like 10 to 20% of the supplies MSRP, and that the 8 gigabyte models, therefore, plenty of them will go above MSRP, even to something like $340. And the 16 gigabyte models, yeah, plenty of them will go to like $450 or something. Now, proportionally, it seems like, from what I've seen from sources, that the 9060 XT will be cheaper than the 5060 Ti. Again, proportionally. Proportionally, the 5060 Ti is like what? Something around $80 more. So yeah, expect that. If a lot of 5060 Ti's, at least in the United States, I know it's different in Europe due to the differences in tariff wars going on right now. In Europe, you might get a lot of 5060 Ti's at MSRP. In the US, they tend to be around $500 right now. Right. So if the 5060 Ti 16 gigabytes around $500, then expect the 9060 XT in the US to be around $400 to $450 much of the time. In other words, you're going to get a chance to get these. They are going to sell out quickly, though. I wouldn't get the 8 gigabyte models. That will probably be plentiful for the first few hours of launch. And look, if you get a 16 gigabyte 9060 XT for under $400, you got a pretty good deal. I would snap that up if you're looking for a card that will give you last gen mid-range performance for low-end pricing. But here's the final thing. I am told that AMD expects the amount of cards that are above MSRP to go down relatively over the next few months. That's different than the 9070 XT that had its price continue to rise farther above MSRP over time and then start to drop recently. AMD thinks that, I won't get into why, but that the 9060 XT will, over the summer, drop in price. So if you don't get one 16 gigabyte model for under $400, unlike the 9070 XT, I might wait. I wouldn't get one for $500. I would definitely wait, or $450. I would wait. And all right, well, that is going to then do it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did enjoy this video, please remember to share it, to like it, to comment down below for the algorithm. And actually, I think you really should share and comment and, try to get this in AMD's face, just like you did when I did that 9070 XT Ultimate Edition video. AMD, who follows me, I have, proof of Frank at AMD liking my tweets. Like, they did advertise specifically overclock models in the 9070 XT after I put out a video demanding that they do that. If it's any debate about whether they will or won't launch, the 9080 or 9090 XT, whatever they call it, they're probably more likely to, if you guys all tell them online, you're going to buy it, please launch it. So I would get the word out on that as well. Additionally, if you want to support the channel, please join the Moore's Law is Dead Patreon. You can get access to a Discord with thousands of fans that would love to speak with you. A lot of these people work at these companies that we're talking about. They're always giving really interesting insight. I'm there, of course, as well. I'll discuss this video with you if you join. And you can also get early ad-free Broken Silicon releases and the ability to ask us questions like Wendell, who was just on, and access to bonus content like Die Shrinks. A new one just came out where me and Dan analyze the evolution of NVIDIA coverage. Like, has NVIDIA changed? Have reporters just changed? Have the people at MLID changed in how we cover NVIDIA over the past few years. Really interesting, just bonus, like hour-long video going through this sort of stuff that I don't think would get a lot of clicks if I just dropped it on YouTube, but it doesn't matter because it's for the patrons. And you can get access to that even at the lowest tier right now. So please join the Moore's Law and said Patreon. We cannot do this without our patrons. And besides that, well, as always, if you made it this far to the end of the video, at a minimum, thank you for watching.